Let me first tell you that there's a place inside of yourself that you have not yet looked. You haven't processed it, and you have not went through the process of digging, excavation from that portion of yourself. And this is where we find ourselves today in Matthew chapter 11. I'm actually referencing the whole passage, Matthew 11, verses 1 through 19. However, I'm only going to read you one. Verse number 12. It says, in the New King, in the New King James Version, it says, and from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent do what? One more time. And the violent do what? Take it by force. I heard a story about a corporate building about 50 floors high. And in this corporate building, it was a beautiful building, and it was made of glass and steel. And one day, at this corporate building, the elevators were down. And there was like no warning, no plan B. The issue is that this skyscraper, or this building with 50 floors, the elevator being down, the executives had a meeting that particular day, and they had to get to their offices, and their offices was on the 50th floor. And so some of them began to walk up the stairs. They start going up, so they had to get to this meeting, and the 20th floor, the 30th floor, the 10th floor, and as some of them started walking on the 10th floor, a lot of them started to go back and say, we're not doing this, because they're sweating through, some of them sweating through their suits, and they mad, they aggravated, and all the things. But a few of them kept going. And as those few of them kept going, they finally got there to find security waiting for them, and security says, congratulations. And they're looking like, for what, right? Drenched in sweat, sweating through their clothes, tired. And they said this was actually, the elevators weren't down at all. This was just a test. And the ones of you who made it up here are the ones that's getting promoted. And they said this, because if you can climb when it's hard, they said, then you can lead when it counts. It's interesting, when we look at this text, we find this idea that I think was overlooked. You didn't know this, but you were produced in the trenches. Do me a favor and look at somebody in the eyeballs and say, you. No, say it like you mean it. Say, you were produced in the trenches. You were produced in the trenches. And some of you say, well, Pastor, that doesn't apply to me, because a lot of us sometimes, first let me deal, with my folks that come from the hood. You were produced in the trenches. Like, there's some things about you that maybe people may not like. There's some things about you that maybe you do. There's some things about you that may be a little bit aggressive. But that's okay, because this thing that was in me was produced in the trenches. Let me talk to the folks that didn't come from the hood, though. There's some folks that didn't come from the hood, and you say, well, Pastor, that's not my story. I didn't have that kind of background. My argument with you still is that you were still produced in the trenches, because this is what I found. No matter where you come from, there's something that we all have, and it's something called a mind. And although you did not come from the hood, You were in the hood in your mind at some point in your life where you had to deal with some stuff and process some stuff and figure out some stuff in your life. You saw some stuff. Everything in your life has not worked out the way you wanted it to, but somehow it produced the person that you are. And this is the hard reality for all of us, is that if you take one thing away from our experiences, then you are not the person that you are. If you remove one aspect of your life, I hear people always say, if I could just change this one thing that I did, if I could just erase, you know, the spirit fingers? That's the stuff that we can't even talk about. If I could just switch up these things. But my argument is that if you switched it up, you actually would not be you. The totality of you was produced in the trenches. And some years ago, true story, some years ago, Candace called me on the phone. This is when I used to teach Crossroads. We used to meet over here. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I don't even know why I remember it. She said, what does that scripture mean? The kingdom suffers violence, and the violent take it by force, is what she asked me. And because I grew up Pentecostal, you always have an answer, even if you don't have one. And so I didn't want to tell her at the time I hadn't got delivered from that portion of my ego. So I gave her an answer, but it was so convoluted and so watered down, I don't even really remember what I said. I just remember trying to answer the question. But the reason why I come here, the reason why I was trying to answer the question is because I've quoted that passage like everybody else has and have never actually read it in context. So as opposed to just saying, I don't know, let me go check, I just start spewing off. You know, back in the day, you'd be like, because the kingdom suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. Tap your neighbor and say, take it, take it, take it, take it. And we be in there running and stuff. Don't know what they talking about. What does that even mean, man? So when I read the passage, I saw something that makes it make sense. Before you get down to verse number 12, you got to stop by verse number 1. This is the problem. If you don't stop by verse number 1, then you miss all the things that Jesus is actually trying to say in its context. So I'll pull back now, and I see something interesting. My homeboy John the Baptist is in a situation. And John the Baptist now, the baptizer, he first is the person that says in Matthew chapter 3-ish, like the end of it, you see Jesus saying, I got to come be baptized, and John saying, I am not worthy to even tie your shoes. Because he says, he identifies Jesus as the one. He identifies Jesus as the one. But then when you get to Matthew 11, all of a sudden you see him shaken because now John sends 2 disciples to Jesus and ask him this question. Are you the one? Wait a minute. How are you asking now, or am I the one? Because I was the one when you was baptizing me, but now all of a sudden you're asking if I'm the one. But let me tell you why he was, come here, why he was asking, are you the one? He was asking, was Jesus the one? Because he found himself in the trenches. John the Baptist was put in prison. So because he was put in prison, he now sends 2 disciples to say, hey, go ask Jesus, is he the one? Because if he's the one, then what am I doing in prison? You ever had that kind of question for Jesus? If you the one, if you the person that I serve, how did I find myself in this predicament? If you are the one that says you would do all these things for me, then how do I find myself here? John now finds himself in some doubt in his mind, not because he doubted before, but because his circumstance made him doubt. So you cannot let a temporary place make you doubt an eternal promise. Come here for a second. I love this, this part of the text. From the Amplified Version, verse number 6, it says this. It says, and blessed, happy, fortunate, and to be envied is he who takes no offense at me and finds no cause for stumbling in or through me and is not hindered from seeing the truth. Let me translate. In verse number 6, before verse number 6 comes, Jesus says, go back and tell John, the blind see, the lame walk, lepers are healed, all the stuff that's happening. In other words, Jesus was like, bro, are you really asking me that? Watch this. This is the part that gets interesting. Technically, Jesus and John the Baptist are cousins. John had the ability when he was baptizing him to cut off the familiar pieces of them that says they're family and calls him the one. But when he's in jail, reduces him back to his cousin. You ever been in a situation where Jesus was Jesus when he was doing what you wanted him to do? But when he's not doing what you want him to do, he changes to something else. John is now in prison, and that passage in verse number 6, it says, blessed is he who takes no offense. So Jesus ends the stanza after he tells him the blind see this, that, and the other. He said, and then he said, and tell him this, say, blessed is the one that is not offended by me. Yeah. Which means then there's some stuff, there's two sides of, and I thought about this morning on the way here. This is not in the notes. I thought about this. There's two sides of this destiny thing that I think that we have been told the wrong thing about. There's the destiny piece that says, God, this is what I want. And this is the part that we give ourselves 80% in. And we give 80% in the spaces and places that we want. Because I want it, it must be God's desire. Because I want it. And then the other side of it is something that we don't like to talk about in church because it makes us a little bit uncomfortable. And it's called sovereignty. Somebody say sovereignty. And that portion of it is God's destiny and his story based upon your story. And that's his ability to do what he wants to do when he feels like it. With no explanation. So the question is that how does your story now fit into his story? Because my argument is that if your story doesn't fit into his story, you will live a life where you're angry with Jesus for your circumstances. And you're trying to figure out why is this not happening and why is this not happening? I would advise you to go and investigate and ask Jesus, is this my desire or is it yours? Because John the Baptist now is tripping because, I don't want to be in jail. But over here on the sovereignty of God portion of it is that John, and Jesus goes on and he starts to celebrate John. He says, man, John was one of the greatest prophets. And he says, y'all don't even know this. He says, John actually is you all's Elijah. He said he's your Elijah. He's like, you know what? He said he's the one that was called to prepare the way for me. This is the problem, though, John the Baptist, is that your assignment was done. What do you do when the assignment is finished? I hate to tell y'all this. I know this is not a feel-good message per se, but I think it's so interesting that we put God in this box where he becomes just a genie that does what we want him to do. John the Baptist now is in prison. And then Jesus goes on to say something else. Now this is the part. We're working our way up to verse number 12. Look at this, verse number 7. So then John the Baptist's disciples go away. And Jesus began to speak to the crowds concerning John. And he starts off with something very interesting. He says, what did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind? What then did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothing? Behold, those who wear soft clothing are in kings' houses. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes. I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is he of whom is written, behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way before you. Now listen to this. This passage, if you don't read 7, there's no way you can understand 12. Up until maybe a year ago, this passage right here, it brings verse number 12 to bear. It brings your life to bear. Here, Jesus says to the people that's listening in the crowd, he says, after John's disciples leave to go back to John and tell him he is the one, Jesus celebrates John and then says to the crowd, what did y'all expect to see? Watch this. He says his location where he spent all his time was in the desert. Because John looked bizarre. He didn't wear he didn't have on, Louis Vuitton. He didn't have on, Michael Kors. Jesus says, if you're going to the location called the desert, why do you expect to find somebody that's not rough in the desert? This is what he's saying. He's saying the location now produced the person. The location produced the person. His desert produced his harshness. And all John the Baptist would do is make everybody say, he would be like, repent, repent. He was screaming that all the time. And he ate locusts. John the Baptist was considered to be a weirdo. Everybody was afraid of him. They would go see him to get baptized because they were afraid of him. But like sitting down to have a meal with John the Baptist, no. He was strange, but he was produced by the desert. He was produced in the trenches. So his ministry reflected his location. Where are you from? What's your desert? And could it be that you were produced by your desert? And up until today, you've been trying to get rid of your desert. Forget about that. I don't want nobody to know what family I come from. Despising family, despising background, despising the experiences because it's painful, but it's your desert. And your mindset has been produced, and who you are has been produced by your desert. John the Baptist now is here. I was reading this too. It's a flower. I think it's the poppies, right? I was reading about poppies. It says poppies, they flourish in rocky and poor soil. And they actually are said, they bloom in old battlefields. I was like, what? They bloom in old battlefields? Wait, there's a flower that grows on an old battlefield? Let me tell you something. You are the flower that grew from your experiences, no matter how bad they were. Are y'all with me in this room? Yes. So I tell people now is that when I approach folks, I'm really careful about trying to change them, because you can't change John the Baptist, because if you change John the Baptist, you change his assignment. Sometimes the way I am was produced for a particular reason. So yes, I need to learn how to talk to folks. Yes, I need to know how to deal with people. Yes, I need to know how to do all those things. I need to be courteous. Yes, but don't take my grit from me, because my grit was produced for the assignment that I got to do. And maybe you don't have to do that assignment. You still don't get it. Okay, let me try another way. You ever thought about this? Jesus is about to be taken, right? And when Jesus is about to get taken, Peter steps up, knife, right? And I pictured it like that in my head, the way I just did it with the sound effects, right? It was like that in my head. Like he just, like, thank you. And then just take it and just, my question when I was reading that, I was like, where did he get the knife from? Was Peter walking around with Jesus? Here's the other question. Did Jesus know he was walking around with a knife? Not only did he have one, but Jesus knew he had one and didn't tell him, don't bring it. So the issue, watch this, is not the knife. The question is, have I learned not to pull the knife out at the wrong time? Watch this. You can keep whoever you are that was created by the desert, but am I mature enough to know when not to bring it out? What am I saying? I never got to point number 2. Don't despise your environment. Don't despise where you come from. And you see what Jesus says in the text, what we just read in verse number 7. It says he starts to talk about John and says he was created in the desert. Did you not know this? Did you not know this? Did you not know? Jesus now is going through an excavation process because he's showing us that there are tools in your desert. And if you're not careful, you'll be trying to run so far away from the desert, you won't pick up the tools that you got from there. You must mine and excavate your desert, point number 3, for the tools you need to take hold of his kingdom. What do I mean? What does that look like in real life? If there is a pattern in my family that I come up from in this desert, then technically, and I used this analogy before, God has given me a flu shot, right? The purpose of a flu shot is to put the flu in, they take the flu and they put it in you so your body can resist it. Y'all catch it? You come up in your desert and you have things about the things around you that you don't like. The purpose of that, though, is so that you can actually build up the immunity in your body not to do those things anymore. So if I don't excavate, watch this, if I don't excavate, go to counseling and to therapy and figure out what this is right here, then what happens is I repeat because I didn't excavate. I'll give you a little bit. There's some stuff that I was like, man, I wish my dad would have told me these things. I wish he would have, because my brain goes. But then I saw them. But I spent most of my childhood despising the desert. So what I did was I created a world for myself where, watch this, I wanted to be better than him. So what I did was I created this perfectionism lifestyle so that I can show him what it's like to do whatever. So I had a perception of him and his marriage. I had a perception of him and how he lived his life. I had a perception of him, how he did everything that he did. So what I did was I'm gonna show him. So all of a sudden, I'm in school, but listen to how my brain was working in school. I'm not going to get straight A's to make my parents happy. I'm going to get straight A's because I'm better than him. I got an A minus on a grade once and came home and I was like, I literally was going, I was in my room, I was hitting walls over A minus because I was like vehemently obsessed with being perfect. And I would beat my chest at little stuff like, oh yeah, you know, I'm saved and I'm holy and I'm this, that, and the other. Like when I used to go to school, I didn't tell people this, but I used to go to school, they'd be like, don't curse around John. And I'd be like, yeah. I had this persona of perfectionism. John, have you had sex yet? No, virgin. You know, all the things. But you would have thought if you met me that I was doing it for God. I wasn't doing it for God. I was doing it because I was better than him. I took no time to sit down with him, to ask him until later, but I never sat down and said, Dad, you know, 1, 2, 3. I spent more time in judgment of my environment as opposed to excavation of my environment. The problem is the pedestal kept getting higher and higher. And it got so high, I would look down, and it was like the abyss. So now I have gotten myself into a little bit of an issue. Because now I got to live up here. And it's miserable up here. Because I always got to dance for you. Always. If I'm mad, I can't really be mad. If I'm this, I can't really be this. Don't make no mistakes. Don't do this. And then all of a sudden, all of the judgment and all the things that I have for him came crashing down, and I started to repeat every single thing that I said I would never do. And it came crashing down. The problem with pedestals, though, they never crash by themselves. They always crash in front of people. So I crashed in front of everybody. And this is the crazy part, though. Come here. That's when the Lord said, you ready to go back and excavate? And I remember the last 10 years, me and my dad were like best friends. But I hadn't talked to him for 30 years. He lived with me and I didn't talk to him. I'm better than him. But this is my trenches. What's yours? What you doing with yours? Are you building another world that was created by your judgments? Or are you taking the time to excavate your desert? Watch this. You can't take it by force if you won't dig for it in faith. Now let's get to verse number 12. Y'all are like, dang, I know. Don't trip. I ain't never told y'all that before. I know. Y'all looking like, wow, but it's real. Like it's. I tell people this. What you think you see on the stage when I'm talking to you is not what you think. Comes from a whole bunch of pain, a whole bunch of stuff over here in the desert, produced by the desert. Look at this, though. Now we come to the verse that I've been trying to get y'all to. It says, the kingdom suffers violence, and the violent do what? The NIV version, I like this version better because it like explains it a little better. Because now we can actually say what this means, right? From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been forcibly advancing, and forceful men lay hold of it. Y'all see that? I love that language. In other words, Jesus actually was saying, from the prophets to John the Baptist, there were aggressive men and women that was produced by their environment. They were aggressive, and they were used to advance the kingdom. And then he goes, and these same kind of people now are the ones that take hold of it. Once again, from the prophets to John the Baptist, these were all aggressive people. And these aggressive people advanced the kingdom. And these same kind of people who don't run from their trenches are the ones that take hold of the kingdom. The only way, all this kingdom talk, the only way you can take hold of the kingdom, the only way you can take it by force is if you process your desert. Don't you ever forget you were produced in the trenches. Go ahead, Lance, it's all good. Jesus is saying this at the end. He goes, this whole idea, watch this. He says, forceful people are the ones that take hold of the kingdom. Aggressive people are the ones. They were produced by this desert that made them aggressive, and those are the kind of people that take hold of the kingdom. Watch this. In other words, most people say, I'm waiting on a move of God. But God is saying, I'm waiting on a move from you. Aggressive, passionate people are the ones that take hold of it. You ever processed yourself in worship? Aggressive, passionate people are the ones that take hold of his kingdom. Have you took the time to even process that the mere fact that you're sitting in this room or you're watching, it means your desert didn't beat you. It didn't beat you. You shouldn't be sitting here. All the stuff you mean to tell me all the stuff you've been through and you got the nerve not to be passionate about nothing? How are you not passionate about nothing? The kingdom suffers violence. These kinds of people in the past have grabbed hold of the kingdom. People that's been through stuff. People who have cried themselves to sleep. People didn't know why they were in prison. People didn't know why they were made to do certain things. These are the kind of people that grabbed a hold of the kingdom. And these same kind of people now today are the ones that will also take hold of the kingdom. What portion of the kingdom have you not experienced because you have not grabbed a hold of your passion? You've allowed your desert to make you flatline. You live in a space of apathy. Every time you open your mouth, you say you don't care. You do care. I'm here to tell you today, grab a hold of yourself. Go back to that desert. Call you a therapist. Serious. Call you a therapist. Be like, hey, this over here is a mess. But there's some tools over here. There's something I can grab from here. Watch this. To produce something beautiful for the kingdom. There's an aggressiveness. There's a passion that can come from what I learned. Bow your heads.